Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. We had some breaking news earlier today. An amazing bantamweight matchup was announced. We are getting Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez, April 8th, 2023. It's an unannounced fight card yet, so it may be a fight night. It may be a pay-per-view. If I had to guess, it'll probably be UFC 287. That kind of lines up with the pay-per-view schedule, but we do not know yet, other than this fight will take place April 8th. It's not announced as a main event or anything, so it's definitely not a main event of the card. But this is an amazing fight. This is going to be my reaction as well as an early prediction. And, you know, recently I've had some complaints about recent matchmaking, but this fight I absolutely love. I have one minor complaint. We'll talk about that towards the end of the video. But this is an amazing fight, and it just makes perfect sense. If you currently look at the rankings, you have Yanez, who's ranked number 13. You have Rob Font, who's currently ranked number 6. That kind of seems far apart. But if you look at their recent fights and their win or loss streaks, it makes perfect sense because you have Yanez, who is on a massive win streak. He's not lost a fight since 2018. He's not lost a fight in the UFC, and he's been due for a step up in competition. And you look at Rob Font, he's on a 2-fight losing streak. You know, his last fight was against Marlon Vera. Tough break for him, lost that fight. I mean, it was crazy, and I talked about this in a recent video. I thought 100%, I mean, it was clear as day Marlon Vera won this fight. I think I had it 4-1 for Marlon Vera. But if you look at the fight in its totality, like 22 minutes, 23 minutes of that fight, Rob Font was winning. He was winning with his striking. Marlon Vera, each and every round, was like rocking him like the last 30 seconds to the minute of the round and stealing the round. So he clearly won the fight, almost finished him multiple times. But it was just weird to see the large percentage of Rob Font winning this fight, and then he ultimately ends up losing. I'm surprised he honestly didn't get finished by Marlon Vera in this fight. The fight before that, he fought Jose Aldo, lost to Jose Aldo via unanimous decision. Pretty dominant win for Jose Aldo. So he kind of, you know, Rob Font had his chance. He made his way up the ranks. He had his chance. He fought Jose Aldo, who was top ranked at the time, fought Marlon Vera, who was in the top 10 at the time, if my memory is correct, and just couldn't get past those guys and couldn't make his way to define himself as a top contender or put himself in title contention. So now it's only right that he gives a chance to somebody behind him. And Adrian Yanez has looked incredible, but he doesn't have the names on his resume. His last fight was against that bum Tony Kelly, where he just went out there and absolutely starched him. This was in June earlier this year on the Cater Emmett card. Absolutely starched him, brutalized him in the first round, then flipped him off afterwards. Tony Kelly was cut from the UFC. So what can you really put on that win? I mean, Yanez looked incredible in the fight, but how much can you really take away from it considering the skill level of Tony Kelly? The fight before that was a split decision win over Davey Grant. I thought it should be a unanimous decision. This was a very good fight. Davey Grant is underrated. Fight before that against Randy Costa, TKO win, but what does that really mean? I don't even know if Costa's even in the UFC anymore. So he's been able to wheel off this massive win streak, but he doesn't have that key name on his resume to propel him towards the top of the division. Now, he gets an opportunity against Rob Font to go out there, get a win over the number 6 guy. And if he wins this fight, obviously, I don't know. I know the UFC always says, oh, basically they trade spots. I know John Anik will say, oh, he's going to have the number 6 spot on Tuesday or whatever they may say after a big win by a lower ranked guy. But I would assume that Adrian Yanez will at least be ranked in the top 10 if he gets a win over Rob Font. This is a massive step up in competition. Nobody he's fought up until this point is as good as Rob Font. And Rob Font, to be honest, I don't want to do too much revisionist history, but his wins aren't aging that well. His best wins are Cody Garbrandt. He won via unanimous decision, which is crazy as chinny as Cody Garbrandt is. And then the fight before that was a win over Marlon Moraes. So he has 2 guys. His 2 best wins are against 2 guys who are chinny as can be. You know, Marlon's no longer with the organization because he's got a chin of glass. And you know, I don't want to pick them apart too much because they were great wins at the time, or at least decent wins at the time. But now Rob Font is in a position where he's 35 years old. He's in the bantamweight division. He's ranked number 6 in the bantamweight division. It's just absolutely filthy. I mean, it's unbelievable how many elite level fighters are in the bantamweight division. There is elite level fighters outside of the top 15. So I think this is going to be one of those fights. You have Yanez, who's 29 years old, This is going to be one of those fights where the UFC is setting up an up-and-coming contender for the young to eat the old. This perpetually happens in the sport, and that's what the UFC is doing here. That's why the UFC has made this matchup. They're trying to build Adrian Yanez into a future contender in the bantamweight division. If Rob Font can't win this fight, where does he go from here? I don't know. He's definitely going to fall out of the top 10. Is he going to be able to make a resurgence at 35 years old in a division with Aljamain Sterling, in a division with Petr Yan, in a division with Sean O'Malley, in a division with Marlon Vera, Merab? The list goes on and on. I believe bantamweight has the deepest pool of talent in all the UFC. So this is a make or break fight for Rob Font at 35 years old. You can get away with being at a higher age in these heavier weight classes. Heavyweight, light heavyweight, you can get away with that. At bantamweight, it's much more difficult to get away with that advanced age. Ask TJ Dillashaw. Ask Dominic Cruz. It just doesn't work out for these guys at 135 at an advanced age. So this fight's going to be very important for both guys. Yanez will make himself a contender if he's able to win this fight. He will prove himself. I've been very high on Adrian Yanez since he entered the UFC. I thought he's looked really good, especially his striking, especially his boxing. His power looks pretty good. But this is going to be a very important test for him. As far as an early prediction, this is a tough fight to pick because Rob Font, even though he's lost his last two fights, I mean, it's been against great opponents. Marlon Vera is on the cusp of a title shot. Jose Aldo, elite level bantamweight. A lot of people, put Jose Aldo saying, he was going to be left for dead, moving down to 135 and cutting all that weight. He looked better than ever at 135. So they're not the worst losses to have. Rob Font has elite level striking, has an amazing jab, and he could go out there and prove that a guy like Adrian Yanez has been moved up the ranks a little bit too quick, and he could send him back to the, outside of the top 15, arguably. So it's hard to pick. I think this fight is primarily going to be striking. You're not going to see Yanez shoot in on a takedown. I don't think you're going to see Rob Font shoot in on a takedown. I think they're primarily going to be striking. And, I think Rob Font is such a good striker. I picked him against Marlon Vera. I thought he was going to go out there and outbox Marlon Vera, which he did. But outside of those finishing sequences, where they were almost finishing sequences where Marlon Vera rocked him multiple times, he was winning on the feet. So I've been very high on Rob Font's striking, but I'm very high on Adrian Yanez's striking. And coming off of 2 losses, coming off a lot of damage against Marlon Vera, by the time he fights, it'll almost be a year off. He'll be fighting April 8th. His last fight was April 30th. So almost a year off for Rob Font. The age, 35 years old. Yanez is 29 years old. My early prediction, and again, I will do an official prediction when we get closer to the fight. So make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss that. But for my early prediction, I am going to go Adrian Yanez. I just think he's the younger fighter. I think he's the faster fighter. There's still a bit of a question mark there for me, whether or not he can hang with an elite striker like Rob Font. But I also think Yanez has the power to go out there and rock Rob Font. And Rob Font just throws nothing but pillow punches. He can't really rock a guy. I mean, he fought Cody Garbrandt, lit Cody Garbrandt up for 5 rounds, and couldn't finish him. And Cody Garbrandt, has the worst chin I've ever seen in my entire life. So he couldn't put him away. I think Yanez has the speed advantage, the youth advantage, the power advantage. I don't think there's going to be any grappling in this fight. So for my early prediction, I am going Adrian Yanez. As far as my complaint for this fight is taking place on April 8th, 2023. The reason I have a little bit of a complaint, it doesn't really matter to me too much, but I think it would have been better if they would have done this. The UFC is holding an event March 25th in San Antonio, Texas. Adrian Yanez is from Texas. So that's 2 weeks prior. The last time they put Yanez on a fight card against Tony Kelly, they put him in Austin, Texas. The crowd was going crazy for him. It was insane when he finished Tony Kelly. Why not? It's 2 weeks prior, and supposedly Rob Font couldn't make it, said he needed 2 more weeks. But I just feel like they had to find a way to put this fight on the San Antonio, Texas card. I honestly believe this. I think the San Antonio card is definitely going to be a fight night. I think you could have done Yanez versus Font as the main event of a fight night card. So I think it's a bit of a misstep by the UFC by putting them, on April 8th, which I believe, again, will be UFC 287. But Adrian Yanez came out and said, look, I tried. I wanted to fight March 25th in San Antonio, Texas. Rob Font or whatever, the UFC didn't want it, so it ended up not coming to fruition. So a little bit unfortunate, But at the end of the day, does that affect me too much? It doesn't affect me. I'm going to be watching on TV regardless. But it's just one of those things where it's kind of nice to see sometime, where the crowd goes crazy for a hometown guy like Yanez. In this entire video, I've been wanting to say his name differently because I found out he did an interview with somebody a couple months ago, and somebody pointed it out to me. And apparently he actually pronounces his last name Yanez, but he lets people just call him Yanez because apparently it's just easier because everyone started calling him that. So there's a little fun fact about him. Honestly, I think a lot of people don't know that. So my brain's been trying to fight with that the whole time because I know that's how you actually pronounce his name. But nonetheless, I'm super excited for this bantamweight matchup. I think it's going to be fun. It's either going to be the end of Rob Font and the beginning of Adrian Yanez's future contendership within the top 10 of the bantamweight division, or it's going to be Yanez being shown that he needs to work a bit on his skill set before he can compete with the elite of the elite. And even if Yanez loses this fight, he's still very young. He's 29 years old. The bantamweight division is just full of sharks. So I still believe even with a loss here, he could probably work his way back to the top. But it's going to be difficult. I mean, the bantamweight division is difficult for anyone to climb. It is the nastiest division in all the UFC. But if he goes out there and gets a win over Rob Font, he's in for a massive challenge in his next fight. I mean, obviously we have to see some of these fights play out. But if he goes out there and beats Rob Font, he's going to be fighting someone like Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Vera, Merab, Petr Yan, Sean O'Malley, Aljamain Sterling, Henry Cejudo, somewhere along those lines. Obviously I know Aljamain Sterling's the champion right now. That's not happening. But the division will play out at this point. I mean, the fight's still 4 months away. If Yanez goes out there and beats Rob Font, I think he's probably 2 fights away from a potential title shot. It depends what goes down because, Henry Cejudo's coming back, and then supposedly Sean O'Malley's going to fight the winner of that. And you have Petr Yan looming out there because he was the champion, lost a controversial fight for the belt, and then got robbed by Sean O'Malley. Brutal robbery. Back at UFC 280 where he 30-27 Sean O'Malley and then ended up not getting the decision, which was disgusting. But if Yanez wins this fight against Rob Font, he'll be in for a massive fight in his next fight. And I just absolutely love the bantamweight division. I'm really looking forward to this matchup. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Who do you think wins this fight? Rob Font or Adrian Yanez? Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.